Welcome back to GBGuns. About 4 years ago, I ran a series on a bunch of very nice SAR guns being imported to the United States by a company by the name of TR Imports. They are no longer importing the pistols. SAR USA, or SAR USA, came to be, and some slight things changed on the guns. We really like these high value, very nice guns. So, wanted to get our hands on some of the new stuff to show you a little bit what's different. It's minutia, and show you some of the models that we didn't get to cover 4 years ago. Today we've got the P8L, kind of a fun one, coming up next on GBGuns. Now, as far as changes, the cases have changed and the grips have changed, but otherwise you're still getting the same quality. Also getting this nice SAR USA decal. In the box we've got the decal, our manual, our federally mandated lock. We have a bore swab and cleaning rod, 2 magazines, witness on the left side. There are 17 round mags, and for this particular model I do believe, highly believe, that CZ75 mags work. In this little pouch here we have a tool, both a hex key and a sight tool for the sight, since this rear sight is adjustable. Now, as with all guns, I like to go through the manual and show you what it's got. It is the same universal manual for all of the SAR USA guns, and I think that's probably a well done thing. Not only are they all roughly based on the CZ design of yesteryear, but it also kind of teases you with what the other guns have. Shows you the variances in magazines and things like that, and the specs for all the guns. So, though I'm not normally a spec guy, I think if you want specs you should be looking at the manufacturer site, not YouTube. But anyways, this P8L is a double action, single action, 17 round capacity, 4.6 inch ported barrel, 8 inches overall, 5.5 inches tall, 1.4 inches wide, and weighs a whopping 37.9 ounces, and that's because it's made of stainless steel. Manual quality is very nice. The print is nicely sized. It's the standard 4-color, and the images are very clear. Did find it interesting, the takedown procedure it prescribes is a little bit different than what I've come to do with CZ style guns, but I'm known for not always having the same takedown style as everyone else. Now I'll get the box out of the way and take a look at this guy, the P8L. Now, just a quick note. This one is described as having a 4.6 inch barrel versus this a 4.2 inch barrel. Should be 4/10 of an inch difference. Not seeing that. So maybe this model is now different than, has changed from that older import that I've got there. So this guy will show clear. Magazine just kind of pours out, but there's plenty of room in there. And because this is a stainless steel frame, slide, guide rod, and barrel, and we've got steel mags, there's no friction for the mags because it's steel on steel. So they are going to drop free very nice and easily. You show clear there. Taking a look at this thing, you might be wondering, but why? That's not tactical. And that's correct. We don't have an optics mounting plate. We don't have a way to attach a light or accessory. It's not a threaded barrel. And it weighs a ton. This is a range gun. A little too heavy for carry for my taste anyways, and doesn't have any of the modern tactical accessories to it. It's kind of just a stylized CZ75. I'm okay with that. Not every gun has to be a home defense gun or a carry gun. Some are just fun to enjoy at the range. What excites me about this is that longer barrel and the ports. I'll show you the ported barrel there, which breathe out of those nice 2 big holes there. These other holes here are lightning holes to help reduce reciprocating mass, which is where most of your recoil comes from. It's not the ignition of the projectile, it's when the slide bottoms out, hits at the end of its travel. That's usually what shocks your hand. We've seen this in slow motion. And then when the slide slams forward, that's what causes the dip. So by reducing the amount of mass that's slamming back and forth, we're reducing the impact on our wrist and reducing the momentum that has to stop when the slide comes back home. So let's take a close look at this thing. We've already shown clear, and we do have a witness window right there to be able to see if there was a round inside. Starting at the front, and hey YouTube, I am filming this with a camera that is on a tripod at a 90-degree angle about a foot in front of me. This is not pointing a barrel at my face or anyone else. We've got some slide to frame play side to side there, which is a little different. You don't typically see that on a lot of CZs. Does that affect accuracy? No, not really. The only thing it could mean is that the gun comes to rest in a slightly different position than it was before. So were you to be shooting from a vise with the gun locked in a vise, it could change your point of impact. As a human holding the gun, no, we're not going to notice because the gun shifts so much. When we're shooting, the slide being a millimeter or half a millimeter left or right, up or down, does not really affect accuracy. What would is barrel lockup. And this barrel is in there tight. It's not moving at all, so that's not a concern. So coming around the front, we can see our stainless steel guide rod and our polished barrel. No room for accessories up here. This is just the shooter's gun. Those nice angled lightning cuts, which are pretty cool. And I appreciate how generous these openings up top are for the ported barrel. When the holes are smaller, that's when you end up getting those really tight jets of gas that can be a little distracting or blinding in lower light. This nice big open area allows that pressure to drop down and expand, and hopefully will reduce any disorientation. You also notice that they are offset from the front sight, so we're not going to be seeing a flame of jet, or a jet of flame right over our sight. Speaking of sights, it's a 3-dot system. They appear to be standard CZ75. We've got smaller dots in the back, larger dot in the front, and the rear sight is adjustable for both windage and elevation, target style. No serrations on the front of the trigger guard, but it does have a little hook there. This nice radius here. Not much of a raised cut for the trigger guard, but since it's a 17 round gun, I can get my large hands comfortably on it. The grips are one of the things that have also changed from older imports to newer. They've gone away with these slick hard plastic and changed them to this rubber, which, hope the microphone's picking that up. It's a nice soft rubber. It's a little bit tacky, so it's really going to hold on. I'm excited about that because the front and rear slide serration, or front strap and back strap serrations, are vertical, which of course is the wrong direction. The gun is typically trying to shift this way in your hand, so if those serrations were horizontal, they would help grab onto you. If they're vertical, that only helps grab for side to side, and the gun's not trying to rotate in our hands. So kind of a fail there. They're not the only ones that do this. I've seen this on Rock Islands and several other guns. I like this ledge that's hanging off each side of the grip. That's probably part of, in fact that is the widest part of the gun. Why the width seems so large in specs, because it provides a nice spot for the thumb to rest, and a nice spot for my hand anyways for this knuckle to be resting on the firing side. No flare of magazine well whatsoever. It's a standard straight cut mag. Maybe a little bit angle in the back there, but as I try to remind people every time, when you have a double stack magazine with a single feed, the magazine itself is sort of the inverse of a magazine well. So magazine changes are not hard, just need to train. Alright, here's our safety, which has a good, nice, positive lock. And the gun can be decocked manually. Safety on there, come in for double action, and then of course all subsequent shots would be single action. If you're going to do that, since I do not see any sort of pocket on the hammer or anything like that to serve as a safety with the hammer all the way down, I would gently lower the hammer, bring it back and let it sit in that half cock position. That's locked. That's going to help with drop safetiness, and the safety still works. So you can carry it like this, drop, pull, or just go cocked and locked, classic style. You can see these grips have a lot of contour to them. They're not just flat panels, and they actually fill the hand very nicely. At least for my hands, this feels very comfortable in hand. Our rear slide frame fit have that same amount of play. And one more thing, just because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, I'm so tired of people thinking that CZs have a low bore axis because they're visually tricked by the slide riding inside the frame. Here's my hand on the gun. Here's the bore. Look how high that is. It's not a low bore axis, people. Get over it. No controls on the right side of the gun. It does appear that the magazine release is reversible. But otherwise, a very handsome gun. Did find it a little interesting that I've got some friction marks there on the barrel hood just from a couple dry fire cycles playing with it as I got it home yesterday. Now I would expect some rubbing to happen, that's just normal, but it's only happening on the left side there, not evenly across. That's kind of interesting. Next we'll field strip the P8L and take a look inside the gun. Field stripping the P8L follows the same protocol as any other CZ75. The manual showed a method of course you're going to check for clear first, but the manual showed a method of hooking a finger here and pushing on the slide that way, which is pretty easy to do. I've kind of followed the Glock thing of the top squeeze, pinch, what have you, but what we're going to do is we're going to be lining up these two dots here, and once they're lined up you can push on this pin on the other side. It can be a bit stiff. I like to use a magazine to pop that flush, and once that's that far down you'll notice that our takedown lever, slide stop release, has popped out. That comes out, and with squeezing the trigger the slide comes right off. We can take a look inside of our stainless steel frame. Now of course this color is a Cerakote. You can see it's been test fired. It looks very standard CZ-ish in there to me. Now, I'm not a big CZ guy, so those of you who are, please let us know. Remove our guide rod, standard way, push down, bring it out of the way. It's an uncaptured spring on a stainless rod, which is awesome. Having a nice heavy guide rod tends to make guns less flippy. Having it an uncaptured spring means you can tune this. Unlock our barrel by pushing down, bring it down forward a little bit and out, and now we can take a look at our slide. Very clean, very raw, kind of what you'd expect from a almost 40-year-old design now. And here is our barrel. Got a nice polish to the feed ramp, which is dirty. Let me wipe that off real quick. Now it's polished up. Pretty barrel. You can see this 2 ports, which people always talk about how ports cost you velocity. That's theoretically true. These ports are pretty far down the barrel, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. Maybe if need be, if we get enough people asking for it, we can chrono this against the other and see if there's any real velocity difference. I'm not expecting much of one. Now, as always, we're going to do our chamber support check using our nozzler match. This part of our test that we've been doing for years recently got some attention because we found a bad barrel. So that plunk of it dropping in is a good thing, and you can see, looking around the base here, we have good chamber support all the way to that step, all the way around. A little bit less where the extractor of course has to be, but otherwise a fully supported chamber. That's important if you're going to run the risk of shooting any reloads or anything with potentially weak brass. Only because when the brass fails, it wants to send, well, the pressure wants to get where it can go, right? And if there's too much friction or it's harder to push the bullet out the barrel, which actually takes a lot of effort, that blast and explosion heads instead down into your hand, down through the frame of the gun into the magazine, usually blowing the floor plate off the magazine. Sometimes it can cause damage to the gun. This being a stainless gun, I think it's probably going to survive better than polymer. Just a theory there. Stainless steel is a little bit stronger. You saw how we dropped the barrel back in and the guide rod and spring. And to our YouTube nannies, this is Field Strip. It is an end user level basic maintenance for this device as depicted in the manual, which I showed earlier in the video. Once we've got our slide back in the frame, same thing's going to happen with these dots here. We're going to line them up and get our clear window through there to be able to drop our pin back in. At this point, kind of wiggle a little bit until we find the sweet spot. There we go, and once it's all the way in, a quick check once more. It works. Everything's good to go. And we've reassembled the P8L. So when we get this out to the range, we'll of course do our what's for dinner test. Our spinner test I'm really looking forward to with this longer barrel and this heavier gun. I think it's going to be really easy to do. Also, the trigger for this is not bad at all. Our double action, there's kind of some stages to it, but you can just pull straight through, and you notice I'm doing this without causing a big dip on the front of the gun, so it's very learnable. The single action comes to a nice wall and breaks. That's about it. Reset is a little bit longer, but very definitive. You can feel it, you can hear it, and it breaks again. Comes very nicely. How learnable the trigger is a big part of the spinner test. It's also a big part of how casual shooters decide if something is comfortable and easy for them to shoot or not, because obviously a gun that takes more time to learn is one that you don't enjoy shooting as often. But we will get out to the range with this as soon as we can, and you'll see my impressions as well as Miss Tia's impressions, our variety of shooting tests, and then we'll give you our conclusion on having spent a day with this thing. But I'm excited about it. I was expecting a little more sheen just from some of the images I saw. It's just kind of a titanium aluminum color, much like my older one is. I also thought I was going to get a longer barrel, but not remembering the specs on this variant of the Mega 2000, perhaps this is a long barrel version that's not offered anymore. This being a little more squared off on the slide versus the triangular, more classic CZ-ish, I appreciate because it's a little more to grab. One thing that I'm not a fan of the slide inside frame is that if you grab real quick and rough across the top, you grab the frame and then you can't rack it. So you have to learn, it's a more precise grab to be able to rack this thing. But that's just learning and training. And these cuts up here do serve some friction for being able to do press checks, but the frame does kind of knock you off of it. Fortunately, we have that witness window there, and it doesn't take a lot of movement to be able to open the action. Anyways, that is the P8L Tabletop review and field strip. Watch for the shooting impressions video to see how this thing actually performs on the range. Thanks for watching.